At the time that plants first invaded land and all through the Carboniferous, the alternation of generations still restricted plants to wet habitats. So the reproductive cycle of algae and of ferns are very similar, where we have a gametophytic phase, which is the haploid version. It then fertilizes. Fertilization takes place. We have a sporophytic or diploid phase, and then we have a distribution of the sporophyte. And through meiosis, we have haploid cells forming, which are then dispersed. Only here we begin to see a change in the dominance of one form of this alternation of generations versus the other. In algae and in the bryophytes, the dominant portion of the life cycle that most of the time is spent in the gametophytic stage. However, by the time we get to the ferns, there's a reversal, and the dominant form is now in the sporophytic form. So through evolutionary time, we see that in this alternation of generations, where natural selection can be very significant on the haploid form, we move from a form which is primarily gametophytic to one which is sporophytic, so that beginning with ferns, most of the plant's life cycle time is spent in the diploid form. So here you see a mature sporophyte of a fern. The sperm and egg are formed in sporangia that you'll often see on the undersides of leaves. And here you see a spore germinating to become sperm, and a close-up of the sporangium in which the spores are located. This still requires an aqueous environment, just as it did for algae and bryophytes. Clicker question, did bryophytes have vascular tissues? We're trying to go back and talk about what we'd mentioned earlier. And of course, bryophytes did not have vascular tissues, because bryophyte is a term that means non-vascular. At what point did cuticles appear? Okay, cuticles would have appeared right here when plants first invaded land. Did lycophytes here have lignin? The answer is yes, they had lignin, because it was lignin that gave the plants rigidity and allowed them to achieve height. At the end of the Carboniferous, CO2 levels were low, and the climate was once again changing. If you want to see what life was like during the Carboniferous, I encourage you to go to northern Arizona to visit the Petrified Forest. All of those trees that you find in the Petrified Forest are leftovers from the Carboniferous period when lycophytes dominated. At the end of the Carboniferous, when CO2 levels got low and glacial periods reemerged, a new life form emerged that could now occupy both wet and dry landscapes. Those were the gymnosperms, and they would then dominate the planet for the next 150 million years.